Okay, let's dive in. Today, we're looking at a feeling, well, a whole set of feelings, really, that I think many of us know, that kind of emptiness. Feeling a bit cut off, maybe.
Disconnected from yourself somehow.
Yeah, exactly. And it often shows up as, insecurity, maybe feeling isolated, and underneath it all, often just plain fear.
It's a really potent mix of feelings, and the sources we're looking at today, they really try to get to the heart of it, which is interesting because they come from such different places.
Different places.
Yeah, we've got insights from modern psychological science sitting alongside wisdom from ancient Vedic texts.
Wow, okay, that blend itself sounds fascinating. So our mission for this deep dive, then, is to bring these perspectives together.
Right, to try and understand, okay, where does this fear actually come from? How does it pull us away from what some of these sources call our true nature?
And crucially, how do we get back? What do these materials suggest for reconnecting?
Exactly. And it's striking, across these varied sources, this one idea keeps popping up.
Does that?
That this fear, this disconnect, it often starts when we kind of drift away from our authentic selves, or maybe when we get trapped by certain, limiting beliefs about who we are.
Limiting beliefs. Can you unpack that a bit more based on the sources? What kinds of beliefs are we actually talking about here?
Sure. So the sources give examples like maybe messages we got really early on, things like keep quiet maybe, or always having to watch so that no mistake is made, that kind of hyper-vigilance.
Right, things you internalize.
Exactly. But it's also that inner voice, the one that just persistently whispers, sometimes shouts, I am not enough.
That one. So it's not just stuff from the outside, but how we take it in.
Precisely. And some sources even label this. They use terms like spiritual oblivion, like forgetting who you really are, or they talk about core beliefs. These deep-seated, often negative ideas.
And this I am not enough feeling, it's not just a passing thought, according to these materials.
No, they present it as something with really, really deep roots and effects. It's foundational in a way.
So how does that sort of build? How does it get stronger?
Well, the sources suggest it starts with those early experiences maybe, and then society kind of piles on,
Societal pressure.
Yeah, the fear of what people think, anxieties about status, always needing that external pat on the back, it all feeds that insecurity.
And if you're walking around feeling not enough or scared of being judged, what does that make you do?
It often pushes us into what one source really vividly calls an invisible race.
An invisible race.
Yeah, this kind of unconscious, relentless drive to constantly prove you're worthy, to show everyone, maybe even yourself, that you do measure up.
Right, trying to perform your way out of feeling inadequate.
Exactly that. And what happens when you're in that race? You start hiding how you really feel, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Put on a mask.
Yeah, a mask, a front. The sources call it a temporary self, and they suggest we can get so caught up in being this temporary self, this ego-driven persona, that we actually forget or lose touch with our true self, the one that's described as naturally calm, naturally joyful.
That sounds incredibly draining. And lonely, in a way. This whole struggle, this disconnect, does just stay psychological in your thoughts and feelings.
That's a key point the sources make, and it's pretty compelling. They say, no, it absolutely does not just stay in the mind. This internal conflict, this fear, it has real physical consequences.
Physical? Like what?
They mention potential disturbances in hormonal balance, for instance, and even the immune system possibly getting weaker because of this chronic stress and disconnect.
Wow, so it's actually affecting our bodies, our biology. What about the brain itself?
Yeah, and this is where the science really connects. The sources talk about the amygdala.
That's the brain's, alarm system, right? The danger detector.
Exactly. And they indicate that this state of ongoing fear can make the amygdala more sensitive, hypersensitive, actually.
So the alarm system gets trigger happy.
Pretty much. It gets kind of stuck on high alert. It starts sending out danger signals even for small things that aren't really threatening. That's where that feeling of being hypersensitive can come from. The internal alarm is just ringing way too often.
Okay, hearing about the physical side, the brain changes. It makes this feel quite heavy. The fear, the masks, the biological impact. It really begs the question, can we change this? Is change even possible when it seems so ingrained even in our brain wiring?
And that is the absolute core message of hope in these sources. Yes. Unequivocally, yes. Change is profoundly possible.
Okay, so where do we start?
The starting point they all seem to agree on, the most vital first step, is developing consciousness. Or, maybe more simply, awareness.
Awareness of the fear itself, of the instant story.
Nicely. Learning to just notice these feelings, the fear, the I'm not enough thoughts, and this is key, without judging them right away.
Using noticing.
Yeah. Just observing, accepting they're there in that moment. Kind of like saying to yourself, okay, yeah, I feel scared right now. Or, there's that feeling of not being enough again. Simply acknowledging it.
Acknowledging, and instead of fighting it or pushing it away immediately.
Right. And this is where the sources highlight that really powerful meeting point between modern science and, well, ancient wisdom.
Okay, tell me about that connection.
So from the science side, we have neuroplasticity.
Neuroplasticity, the idea that our brains aren't fixed, they can actually change.
Exactly that. It shows our brains are flexible. They can literally reorganize themselves, create new pathways based on new experiences, new practices. We can physically build new connections.
Okay, so the brain can change. How does the ancient wisdom part fit in?
The sources bring in the Vedic Sutra Yadbhavam Tadbhavati.
Okay, what does that mean, roughly?
Mm-hmm.
Something like, as you feel, so you become, or what we think creates our reality.
Yeah, those are good ways to put it. As the senses, so shall it be, is another translation. It basically captures this powerful idea that our inner state, our thoughts, our consciousness fundamentally shapes our experience.
Ah, I see.
So you put that together with neuroplasticity.
And it suggests the power to change our minds, and maybe our reality is actually within us.
Exactly. It's a really empowering synthesis. The potential is there.
So we know change is possible, scientifically and philosophically.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we actually do it? Is it just about thinking positively, or are there like practical steps the sources recommend?
Oh, they definitely emphasize practice. Not just thinking, but doing. Simple but really effective techniques.
Like what? What kind of practices are we talking about?
Well, one really fundamental one is just taking a few moments each day, sitting quietly and focusing on your breath.
Just noticing the breath?
Yeah, not trying to control it or anything, just paying attention to the sensation of breathing in, breathing out, observing it without judging.
Simple mindfulness. Okay, what else?
Another really crucial one is learning to question those old automatic negative thoughts when they pop up.
The I can't do it or what will people think ones.
Exactly those. The sources suggest actually challenging them, asking yourself, wait, is this thought really 100% true right now? Or maybe, is this just an old habit, an old fear talking?
So interrogating those automatic thoughts a bit.
Precisely. And maybe one of the most powerful is actively cultivating a sense of self-acceptance.
Self-acceptance.
Yeah, really understanding and accepting that, whatever I am right now is okay. Getting comfortable with the feeling, the deep knowing that I am enough.
I am enough.
Mm-hmm. There's a lovely phrase one source uses. It's in Bengali. Ami jamon shitai jatisto.
And that means?
It translates pretty directly to, I am exactly as I am, and that is sufficient.
I am exactly as I am, that is sufficient.
Wow.
Something really solid about that. These practices, the breath, questioning thoughts, self-acceptance, they sound simple, almost too simple maybe. Do the sources suggest they really make a difference?
They absolutely insist they do. These steps might seem small, but they're presented as really powerful ways to start breaking those ingrained fear patterns in the mind. They help build genuine inner stability, inner security, piece by piece.
Okay, so if we try to pull it all together, the picture emerging from these different sources seems to be that fear, emptiness, they often come from being cut off from our own reality, our true selves, maybe living under a kind of mistaken identity where we undervalue ourselves.
That really seems to be a central idea, yes. And while it's a common experience, lots of people feel this way. The big message is that it's not fixed. It's not a life sentence.
Right.
Reconnecting with that inner center, that true nature, is genuinely possible. It happens through becoming more conscious, through these kinds of simple, consistent practices, and through that ongoing journey of self-knowledge and self-acceptance. Change isn't just a possibility. It's framed as an inherent potential we all have.
That's really, well, it's very encouraging to hear. Knowing change is fundamentally possible, even when things feel stuck.
It really is. And maybe, as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, I can leave you with a thought to just sort of mull over. It comes from that idea in the sources about strengthening your inner foundation.
The inner foundation, okay.
Yeah, or your inner base. Just imagine for a moment, what if you really start working on building that internal stability, that inner strength the sources talk about? How might that change your relationship with all those things on the outside? The pressures, the expectations, the fear of judgment that used to feel so overwhelming.
That's a powerful question. Like, does building up the inside automatically change how you deal with the outside.
Exactly. Does inner strength naturally lead to a different kind of outer strength, maybe a resilience? And how could that shift the way you see challenges, the way you navigate them? Something to think about.